Intergovernmental Relations Committee. Please stand for the pledge. Legislator Nasarino?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Legislator Elner?
Here.
Legislator Nasarino?
Present.
Chairwoman Adizio?
Present. Moving on to number 3 is the approval of a local law strengthening the term limit provisions for the office of Putnam County Legislator. We discussed this previously. The local law number 8 of 2013, enacted by the county legislature on July 2nd, 2013, set forth a term limits regime for the office of county legislature, which currently may be amended merely by a favorable vote of 2/3 of all the members of the county legislature. The system of governmental term limits engenders transparency in government, promotes the accountability of public officials, and increases public trust, as well as provides for the opportunity for new voices and new ideas to be heard. In order to engender transparency in government, promote accountability, and to increase public trust, this county legislature is desirous of requiring a unanimous vote of the county legislature in order to amend, modify, or repeal term limits for the office of county legislator. Do you have any discussion or questions?
Well, we have modified the original resolution, and that's what we're considering here this evening, which to me is a good structure for the next coming years and gives the timetable for 25, 26, and 27, how the terms will cycle.
Anyone else? Just wants, do you have a question?
Go for
Legislator Montgomery.
The committee goes first.
I asked him, he doesn't have any.
This is still in committee. For some reason, I just looked at special rules and I thought it was a fall, so I'm glad that it's not gone to the fall. And I'm presently asking that someone on this committee make a motion to table this until next year. There's no reason to push this through right now. With the past 3 pieces of legislation that the majority of this legislature has proposed has been nothing but self-serving to the legislature. You see, we have a room full of people here who are waiting to discuss the budget, which we had before us even when this was proposed. So I'm just perplexed why we would propose something like this and push it through at the end of the year. It's complex. It's something that takes a pretty long time to dive into and understand how it has to go to the state legislature for them to approve. And I have a lot of questions pertaining to this, and I'm not sure that we want to dive into it all tonight. And I certainly don't have all of my questions on my notes that I know I'm going to want to ask in the future. So I'm asking one of you to please table this.
Through the chair, the budget meeting begins at 6:30, so we have plenty of time for this special rules meeting. I will be supporting it. I don't see any reason to delay it. The language is pretty clear and concise based on the cycles. At the general election held in November of 2025, county legislators from legislative districts 5, 6, and 9 shall be elected to said term for 3 years. At the general election held in November 2026, county legislators from legislative districts 2, 3, and 8 shall serve for elected said term for 3 years. At the general election held in November 2027, county legislatures from districts 1, 4, and 7 shall be elected for said term for 3 years. So the governor had put some initiatives forward to run in odd and even years, which precipitated this consideration moving forward. We will maintain 3-year terms, and this is how the cycle bears out in order to realize that we will continue with the 3-year terms and the 12-year maximum years of service.
Legislator.
So as of 4:15 today, a judge ruled that New York State's new even-year election law violates state constitution. The judge sided with the challenge to the law, arguing that it conflicts with individual county charters. 20 New York counties are chartered, meaning they have locally drafted and approved laws outlining the structure and authority of county government. There have been 3 separate amendments to the state constitution allowing for and protecting counties' ability to govern through charters. At issue, it is a law passed by the legislature and signed by Governor Kathy Hochul in December 2023 that moves several local elections outside of New York City to even-numbered years in 2025, with the exception of some village elections and races for county clerks, sheriff, district attorneys, and local judges. The prerequisites of special law were not followed, and the subject matter of the even-year election law is inherently a local issue as it affects no state offices. The even-year election law is unconstitutional as specifically prohibited in Article 6 of the New York State Constitution, Judge Gerard Neary wrote in his ruling. So that came out today at 4:15. So I would like to say also that with this imposing a unanimous vote with only a merely 2/3 vote is by far, I think, a stretch. And it's going to prohibit future legislators from doing their jobs, and I don't even believe it's lawful.
Through the chair, totally fundamentally disagree with you said, and what the statement you just read just supports exactly what we're doing here tonight. It should fall upon the towns, villages, and
But we were
municipalities.
changing it as
So
you
we are
said.
changing
You
it.
were changing it because of the mandate.
You're
from
interrupting
Yes,
me.
no-
You're
no back and
interrupting me,
forth.
and I have the floor. So we're changing it, but nothing's really changing because it's still a 3-year cycle and the 12-year max.
Legislator Yonke.
The key to this legislation is the term limit provision. Okay, right now, 6 people in all of Putnam County can overturn term limits. Every senior group I've spoken with, every group that I've spoken with unanimously supports term limits. I think that by strengthening or weakening the ability to overturn term limits is in the interest of, it's what the people want, and I'll be supporting it.
Legislator.
First, I want to thank Legislator Crowley for bringing that information. To me, this is a very simple issue. All we're trying to do here is ensure that there will be term limits. 2/3 of the legislature, I don't think, is enough to assure that in the future there always will be term limits. I am a strong proponent of term limits, and I want to continue to make sure that there will be term limits. So that's why I'm in favor of this.
I totally agree. I've spoken to many people also. And I think that's the problem in Washington that we have. No term limits. Legislator Castellano.
I can't agree enough with that statement for sure. That's why I support term limits. That's why 12 years ago, I know myself, Legislator Nasarino voted for term limits, and I think it's a good deal. But I did have a question. So the way this is written, an individual could only serve for 4 terms of 3 years.
That's 12 years,
But
right?
if a legislator gets appointed midterm because one of the legislators steps down, seeks another position, or just decides to retire, and we have a legislator that only serves for 1 year, for a 1-year term, let's say, that 1-year term should not count towards the 12 years, because it sort of says 4 terms for 12 years, whichever is less. So I wouldn't want to see someone take a 1-year term because someone stepped down or left office for whatever reason. That 1 year shouldn't count as a
count.
full term for that person. I think this is not written correctly. I'd like to see it changed to a maximum of 4 3-year terms. So if an individual takes office for 1 year or 2 years, that shouldn't be counted towards the 12-year max, in my opinion.
I would tend to agree with that because there might be a situation where somebody fills an unexpired term.
Correct.
And we've seen that with, we see you, I think she sees you. That happened with the county executive, Mary Ellen Odell, and that has
It's happened with legislators.
it happens with legislators over the years as well. I would certainly agree with that. I also agree with term limits wholeheartedly. In the past, we had legislators that were legislators for 20 years. You know, we don't want not only the Washington mentality to hit, but the Albany mentality to hit. And when you serve too long, you know, oftentimes people become complacent and comfortable. It's always good to have new blood. It's always good to have people in our community to seek public office and not for people to monopolize and because we don't want career politicians in Putnam County, period, end of story. And I think that the greater community at large feels exactly the same way.
Absolutely.
I don't disagree with having term limits. I think the 12-year term limits, I agree with wholeheartedly. Let me just put that on the record. I do have a question with how it would work. So just hypothetically stating, I have a 3-year term, and then I would have a second, if I was elected, have a second 3-year term. Then the next term, if I, just hypothetically, the next term would be 4 years, then I would only be able to
No.
serve.
No,
Oh, no.
No.
No, these are 4-3.
these are all,
Three.
Yes, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
not
Oh, yes.
changing the duration, it's
No.
just,
It's the same
it's
as
just
we
making
have,
more difficult to change.
No, it's consistent.
it's the same as we have now.
So would you be
That's,
partial to having a majority or supermajority vote on this instead of a 2/3 vote? Because if we're looking for a unanimous vote on something like this, don't you think we should have a supermajority vote to push this through?
Not necessarily, would be my opinion.
Right.
I thought we only
would
needed a
need 6.
2/3 vote on this
supermajority is 6. You're saying 6 instead of 9.
to pass it, yes.
That's where we are now.
2/3.
No, she means,
In order to pass it,
Order
we
to-
need a supermajority of
Yes.
6 votes.
we will need 6 votes to pass this.
Okay.
No, we wouldn't.
No, we don't.
Supermajority.
It's written as 2/3.
It's a two-third trend. This is.
No, are you saying that in the future to change it?
No,
To-
I'm saying to vote on this, we should have to have a
I
supermajority.
disagree.
To vote on this, if we're asking for a unanimous vote in the future, why would we have a less of the body vote for this and ask for a full majority vote to do a,
I believe we do need 6 votes tonight. Pass this, not tonight,
I
but
thought it was
yes.
2/3.
Two-thirds.
That is 6.
Two-thirds.
2/3 is 6
Sorry,
votes.
Majority vote, I apologize. I said
That's okay.
Majority vote, I apologize.
Legislator Goldman.
What I believe she's saying is, instead of having 6 vote to pass it, have 9 vote to pass it. Since you want to have 9 to change term limits,
That's not what she said.
pass it.
That's not.
That's not, I don't think that's what you were saying.
That's
I
not
would
what
go
you
for that
said.
too. I
Yeah,
think
but no,
if
that's-
oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Sorry,
Go
John.
ahead, no, go ahead.
I just believe if we're imposing such a stringent requirement that I don't even know, again, I'm all for term limits, but I don't know that that's lawful to have a full majority vote, and we might be, you know, constraining future legislators. I think that maybe we should have a unanimous vote on that.
Excuse me, constraining them from what? From voting for term
Maybe-
limits?
No, maybe changing
That's-
it, maybe changing the term limits to 2 years or 3 years, or amending this resolution. We need a unanimous vote to amend this resolution in the future.
First,
So
this is,
that's problematic to me. What if they want to change their terms to 4 years or 2 years, like other counties? Why are we putting the restrictions on future legislators?
Yes.
Well, I think that can, first of all, what Joe suggests, I completely agree with the partial terms. The other thing is, I think that very simply that can be adjusted, so instead of saying 4 terms, say a total of 12 years, except for that, I'm going to call it interim term. Because where I've come from, I want to make sure that no legislator serves more than 12 years. And if I can leave my mark on this legislature saying that we have enforced term limits, we've strengthened term limits, and no one's going to serve any more than 12 years, I'm going to be very happy.
I agree. I think that's a good idea, because it could also be, if it was 4 years, like you said, it would be 3 terms of 4 years.
So if they want to
Whatever
change the
equals-
duration, but it's still a
Whatever equals
maximum of
12 years.
Right. You just gotta check the wording, because if
Yes.
somebody serves for 1 year, then they do 4 full terms, does that mean they have to step down in year 2 of the 4th term? We can fix the
Mhm,
wording.
no, we have to fix that.
And
Yeah.
the wording is just wrong.
Mhm.
It should be something to the equivalent of, no legislator should serve more than 4 3-year terms. And any partial term should not be included.
Included.
in
Mhm.
term.
Okay.
And through the chair.
What did you say?
Legislator
I
Goldman?
think we're talking about two different things now.
Yeah,
What
we
I
are.
suggested before is the fact, the way we have it written here, a legislator shall serve no more than 4 terms or 12 years. But if in fact you get appointed, a future legislator, of course, gets appointed to a 1-year term because the legislator steps down and someone steps in, that 1 term should not be counted as a full term.
Because it would be 13 years,
Well, then
you're
we have to be
saying.
rewritten because.
No,
it
it's just the
No.
one line
says
that would,
12 years.
it's the one line that can be amended,
Yeah, I will.
amended tonight.
It led, one second, I just want, Dan Birmingham, would you like to come up and just clarify a couple of things for us?
For much of the confusion here, and I
Yes.
apologize for that. And thank you, by the way, for having me up here. Dan Birmingham, Town of Southeast, here as a citizen. What you have before you tonight are just some ideas I talked about with this committee about a month ago. The proposal you have before you tonight is no different from the proposal you received last month as an additional. So, and this is strictly, in both pieces, both for the county executive portion and for the county legislative portion, the only change that each of these suggestions make to the charter is merely to impose a unanimous vote required in order to modify, amend, or change term limits. That's all this does. The original one, and this is where the confusion comes from, and I plead guilty to that, the original idea was to try and have this county legislature be its own, chart its own destiny should the state come in and apparently do what the judge said they can't do now, which is great. But that's not what we're talking about today. This does not need any approval or sanction from the state legislature. This is merely, to quote the words that Aaron just used from the court case, this is merely the county legislature amending its own charter, and apparently the judge agrees that, generally speaking, counties can do that. So I just want to just say, if you take a look at the blue and reds, I think you might have this as the,
red line.
the only new language, if we could just take a look for a moment at the county legislative portion, the only new language is the blue language, and the red language is that which is stricken out. So to Joe's legislator Castellano's point, and I hear what he's saying, and I don't disagree with him, if you take a look at paragraphs B and C, Joe, I think that's where you were talking about, that's currently in your charter. That's currently in the county charter. This was put in 2013, local law number 8, so that exists today. And, but here you are talking about amending it, so that's certainly something this committee, and if it goes out of committee, the full board can consider. And this is just my 2 cents as a citizen. I think to answer Joe's concerns, and apparently some others have this concern, you might want to strike paragraph C and then amend paragraph B to read as follows. And paragraph B, and again, just my suggestion, but paragraph B would start, with the exception of any partial term, the county legislators shall serve a maximum of 4 terms, period. Joe, does that?
Yeah, that works for me.
So to recap, again, this is just my suggestion, it's not an amendment, but I'm just trying to echo what Joe was saying. To get rid of paragraph C, again, which was adopted back in 2013, and paragraph B, amend that, which was also adopted in 2013, to start out with paragraph B, with the exception of any partial terms, the county legislator shall serve a maximum of 4 terms. It leaves everything 3 years. We're not talking about the 4-year, 3-year term issue that was the origination of the confusion, again, which I plead guilty for. And again, the only change, the new change, is the blue language. And what that does is requires a supermajority, a maximum, a unanimous vote of this legislature to change term limits. I'll note that this legislature takes unanimous votes quite often. Anytime you have to accept an additional, you need a unanimous consent for that, if I recall. I haven't been on the legislature for 12 years, but I remember that's the way it used to be. And there may be other instances where this legislature requires a unanimous vote. So, but the policy reason and my thoughts behind requiring a unanimous vote is because term limits, and again, I was a skeptic 12 years ago. with term limits, but I've come around and seen the good things that have come, particularly on this board with respect to term limits, that it's such an important issue that I believe, as a citizen, we should raise the minimum threshold to amend, modify, or repeal term limits to unanimous vote. Quite frankly, it prevents certain mischief that might happen towards the end of politicians' terms. Members on this legislature will be affected by it first before any other elected official will. So you guys have skin in the game as well. And so that's my thoughts behind that. And we're just right now talking about Section 202 with respect to the legislature's terms, but there's also, in addition to that, some other changes that comport with this unanimous requirement in the executive action on local laws, which say, again, conforms it to the unanimous vote, and then Section 15.01 of the charter, which again is the amendment of the charter, how you amend the charter. It works that in as well. There was a comment earlier Bill made, which I think has some credit to it, but unfortunately, the way the charter's written now, there's no requirement to pass this by unanimous vote. The charter, in fact, says you can only pass charter changes with a minimum of 6 votes. So, of course, that could be 9. If I'm hoping everybody gets behind it, that would be great. But you only need 6, the way the charter's written now. So that's my 2 cents, or maybe
Thank
3
you.
or 4. And there's a similar for Section 301 for the county executive as well.
Legislator Crowley, sure.
So I also wanted to talk about the
Sure.
terms. So I don't want to stick future legislators with having to be stuck with a 3-year term if they decide to change that. So can we change the language on that too, or if they want to modify it to either a 3 4-year terms or 2-year terms, that should be able to be something that can be modified. Don't you believe that?
Well, in fact, if you take a look at paragraph E, in the blue, it's on the first page of 202. One more page. You're on the county legislator. Anyway, if you take a look at the section 202, the paragraph E, you'll note that there's something in there that starts with, except in the instance where a general or special state law would otherwise necessitate amending, modifying, or repealing term limits must be done with 9 votes. So what that does is insulates this legislature from having to fall victim to a state legislative movement that would require you to stay into even years.
I'm not talking about
Okay.
that, I'm talking about the future
Okay.
legislators, if they made a decision that
Right.
they wanted to change that, I don't feel like
Right.
they should be held to a unanimous vote to change the terms of the years from either 4 or 2. I feel like as long as we're in that 12-year frame,
Yep.
they should be able to make that decision.
That's a sound policy decision, and under this, there'd be needed 9 members to do that.
That's what I'm saying, I don't find that to be fair, and I also have a question for you as
Sure.
a
Citizen.
candidate who's running,
Okay.
and who's proposing this. You know it's budget season, I don't understand why we're doing this right now, too.
Well,
I
I was
think it's
here last
horrible.
month. I was hoping it would get passed
I know,
last
I
month.
just
It's not up
think
to him,
it's
it's not his fault.
No, it's not, but I just
Yeah.
feel like,
Yeah.
you've been through this before,
have.
and I think it's there's a lot to be discussed here.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate your work, I appreciate term limits wholeheartedly, I think it's great, but I think that there's things that need to be worked out before we're doing this, and I think it needs more
Okay.
discussion.
Legislator Yonke?
Yeah, Dan, would we also need to eliminate paragraph D? It says in no instance may a legislator serve more than 4 terms or 12 years, whichever is less. If we're putting that other language in, should that also?
I'll defer to council on that, of course, but you may want to consider making the same type of change that we did in paragraph B. Yeah, with the exception of a partial term. You're right, that would inoculate paragraph D from that.
Okay. I'm sorry, Legislator.
I think this is an important charter change, and I don't think that we should be talking about or even considering, my personal opinion, that we arbitrarily change the terms and, a new legislature comes in, or 3 or 4 get term limited out, and 3 more come in, and we arbitrarily just decide to do 4-year terms versus 3-year terms. The purpose of this tonight is to solidify this because it is so important, because politics shouldn't have a play in it, because change of public servants shouldn't have a hand in it. This is to give structure and consistency as we move forward. And the way it's proposed, I think the 6 votes and also the 9 votes to change it avoids arbitrarily making decisions that might be in bad faith or for some arbitrary or self-serving reasons. And I think it's a safeguard.
Legislator Goulman?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I agree with what former legislator Birmingham said in many ways, even the part where he says we need a unanimous vote if we want to change something. Legislator Crowley, Legislator Yankee, Legislator Catalano, and Legislator Nasarino all has changes. If we haphazardly change something today, if we want to change this again, we need 9 people to vote on this. So I suggest what Legislator Montgomery suggested at the beginning was table this till we figure out what we're doing, so we don't have to have a change where we need 9 people to vote on this. So please, table this until, and the next one until we can.
Okay, but that's what the whole proposal is about, the 9 votes. So tabling it is not going to change.
Different suggestions on here.
No, but the suggestions didn't change the 9 votes.
Yes, it will, because if we pass this the way it is,
No,
or we do something wrong, we want to change it, we need 9 votes to change
The
that.
charter says 6 votes, and that's consistent with any legislation that we propose in the charter.
As it is, Mr. Birmingham, to change it, we're going to need 9 votes, is that correct?
That is correct. And, but that's,
Yes.
I think that's the strength of this proposal, though. I think that's the strength of this
that's what I'm
proposal.
saying. That's the proposal, right. No, I understand, it's Legislator Montgomery.
So if we're not going to table it, I hope that this committee isn't going to move it forward to the fall, because we still obviously have a lot to discuss, and I have a question that was just raised by Legislator Yankee. I didn't follow this. In paragraph D, in no instance may a legislator serve more than 4 12-year terms, whichever is less. Now, he's suggesting we eliminate that and incorporate it into
Not eliminated.
paragraph,
No.
what, I don't know,
No.
but.
Not
so that's
eliminate.
That's not what was said.
So
Okay.
what was that then?
No.
If I could recap, I think what Legislator Yankee was suggesting, if you recall a few moments ago, we talked about paragraph B, where we put a new, or I suggested, and this legislature can take or leave, it would start, paragraph B would start with the exception of a partial term, then continue, the county legislator shall serve a maximum of 4 terms, period. So we end that there. I think what Legislator Yankee was suggesting is to make that same change to paragraph D, not to combine the 2 paragraphs, but rather to put that same introductory phrase in front of paragraph D, which would say, with the exception of any partial terms in no instance. So again, it would carve out, I think, what Joe and Paul were talking about. Roger Gross comes to mind. He was, I think, the last legislator who was appointed during a partial term, and that would have an impact on that. Suppose he was elected to, in year 10, to a 3-year term, what would happen in his last year? It's beyond 12 years. So I think both of those points tries to address that scenario.
There's a thread here with my questions, and I'd like to continue.
I'm sorry.
please.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. I just want to make sure I'm not.
Go ahead.
cut off,
I'm
like
sorry.
I usually am.
sorry.
No one's cutting you off.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thank you. So, just basic question then, so we have at the general election held in 2026 from 2, 3, and 8, and we have 3 legislators here currently serving districts 2, 3, and 8. Does that affect you at all? Will it affect your terms? You can only serve, you can't serve anymore?
No.
These are just basic
Right, no.
questions. When you read something like this is what you're presuming.
This is what we're safeguarding.
So
This is
we
what
wanna
we're safe,
make sure.
right.
And then, for example, Mr. Birmingham, who served on the
did.
legislature previously, will this affect his ability, now does he get to serve another?
God, I hope not.
4 terms, or does your time count from when you served previously?
You raise a very interesting foundational question. The original term limit law was passed in 2013, and there's a question that others have raised, I have not, and I've not looked into it, as to whether or not that law itself would be retroactive to anybody who hadn't been on the legislature at that point. So I don't know the answer to that. I will say my thought process behind those 3 changes was just to bring them up to date. I mean, we're looking at 24-year-old laws here, dates here. Yeah, it was just kind of a cleanup thing.
I wasn't born yet.
Yeah, you and me both. We share the same birthday. But that's all that effort was just to clean it up and bring it up to date. But I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know the answer to your question.
I appreciate your work on this. I still think there's a lot to discuss, and I'm hoping that you'll continue it
Yes.
in the next rules committee meeting and not
Okay,
move it
thank,
forward.
thank you.
But
Legislator
the
Castellano.
answer to that question, in my opinion, the way this is written, would be that you would not be able to serve more than one more term.
Right.
Okay.
And that would be the same for anybody, because that's very clear here,
Mm-hmm.
that if you did serve even, let's say, 6 years in the 1980s,
Right.
you can only serve 6 more years if you decide to come back to this job, in my opinion. And I think that's pretty well stated here and very clear.
Mm-hmm.
Do you object to that, Dan? I mean,
I
you're
have-
the first person to be affected by it.
I would have no comment. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think your answer is very reasonable, and, yeah, I guess you're right, I would be the first one. But what about a county legislator who served for 10 years in the 1980s? Because we only had 2-year terms back then.
Can you name one that would come back? to this job?
I know, and I'm having second thoughts myself. So I can't answer that, but yours is a very reasonable reading of the statute. Yeah, yours is a very reasonable reading of the statute,
Okay.
the proposal.
Can we get a response, thank you, Chairman.
Yes.
Can we get a response from legal, how this would affect Dan being the first one coming in, and how term limits would affect him before we move this forward? Because
I don't think Dan cares.
I don't care.
He wants one term.
I think it's appropriate,
Mm-hmm.
because I can say the same thing, or anybody could say that. There's a bunch of people who said, I'm going into Washington for one term, or I'm going to do this, and they've been
Yep.
there longer than I've been alive. Chuck Schumer's a great,
No term limits there,
okay?
that's the problem.
So-
That's
so
the
my-
problem. That's why we-
so my
that's what we're
point is
safeguarding.
that Can
Yeah.
we, I'm not
Sure.
opposed, but can we get a response from legal
No.
to, as Dan being the first one coming in and this affecting him, to see how it would play out, what the term, how that would work. I'd like to know that before we vote on something, and, you know, then we wouldn't be imposing the term limits that we're standing so firm on.
But why would you care if he's not opposed to serving one more term?
We're not changing the term limit.
No, she's talking about Dan. She's talking about Dan.
I'm talking about Dan. I'm
It's
just
not all
saying,
about me, guys.
No.
Yes, it is.
Well, you're proposing it, so I want to
Yeah.
know, I want an answer to it. I
Okay.
just think it's appropriate.
Okay.
Through the chair,
Yes.
I don't think, I think it's fine to seek an answer, but I don't think that affects what we're considering tonight.
Legislator Sage?
Just for purposes of illustration here, can I propose the fact that we throw this whole thing out and get rid of term limits altogether? And there's 6 of us here that would vote to throw it out right now?
5.
Let's just go.
Yes, we could.
5 of us.
Well, 5 of us.
You need 6, though.
Five
You need
of us
6.
just throw it all out, we could all be here as long as we want. I mean, that's the purpose, and that's the point we're trying to make here.
Right.
Is it only takes that majority, just that simple majority.
Well, that's why we're
right?
safeguarding this.
To get
Yeah.
rid of it all, and I could be here for another 20 years, I mean, you know, not that I ever would. But I think that's the purpose of
Okay.
having this
All right.
majority. And that's the point that legislator Johnson is trying to make. Right now, there's 6 people in Putnam County that it would take to overturn these term limits. And I don't think anybody here is willing to do that. And I really am firmly behind this. I think it's a good idea for us. I don't think that it's a majority. I think everybody's in favor of term limits. I don't think this is just going to solidify that.
So, just want to say, so if we clean up the language, and we have two places here that we want to add, that, with the exception of any partial term, to B and D, would that be able to,
And I think, not to speak for Joe, but I think you'd also want to get rid of paragraph C,
C? Delete C.
Yep.
because that goes to the heart of what Joe brought up
Okay.
originally, is that a partial term
Should not be counted.
should not be counted as a term.
Okay, so we need to add for B, add D, and delete C.
So do you want to, well, I'll defer.
Yeah. We do want to add that, and we would just want to clean the language up. You're comfortable with that?
Very
Are you?
comfortable.
You're good? Okay. Okay.
Motion to amend.
Yeah. Okay. Motion to amend. B, adding, yes.
We're just making.
We're just making a motion to amend. Make a motion to amend B. Huh?
I didn't know discussion was closed, I apologize.
No, it's not closed, no. I make a motion to amend B and add, with the exception of any partial term, the county legislators shall serve a maximum of 4 terms, regardless of the fact that a term may not have been 3 years.
I
Yes?
I-
No?
period.
Period after, I think Joe was suggesting period after terms.
Okay. Period, get rid of regardless. Okay, that's why. Okay, so with the exception of any partial term, the county legislator shall serve a maximum of 4 terms. And we're deleting C. And then also in D, in no instance may a legislator serve more than 4 terms or 12 years, whichever is less, with the exception of any partial term, correct?
Joe, is
Okay.
that what you?
Yeah, I think it should start with the exception of.
With the exception.
Put it at the front,
language.
D.
Okay.
In no
Introductory.
instance shall a legislator serve more
Okay.
than 4 3-year terms.
Okay.
And I guess we should recalculate the lettering.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say.
That would be B and C. Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any other legislators?
Open it
Okay.
up to the
We could open it. Legislator Montgomery?
We'll see this new language in next month's committee meeting of the rules.
We're going to, unless we move it to the fall,
Well,
all right?
there's still a lot to discuss.
Yeah.
here. We haven't seen the language, so I hope, I mean, it took you guys a year to pass a climate smart resolution.
Okay, but this is,
That would bring us money, and you're gonna push this through in 2 months, so that makes no sense, and it's now 41 minutes.
Questions from the
into
audience?
it.
Okay.
We still have another whole section to
Yep.
discuss on this, and
That's
we've
right.
got all these people waiting to
Okay.
discuss the business of the county.
Just,
Just the
if I-
business of the
embarrassing.
county.
I mean, I was going to ask the audience if they have, anybody from the audience like to speak? Dan, did you want
I
to say?
just had a quick question.
Yes.
Did you just make a motion to amend which was approved? Have you voted on the underlying legislation yet?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Can you come up to the podium, please? State your name.
Good evening, everyone. Lynn Eckhart from the town of Southeast. I really am hoping this is not moved to full. I've been watching this since Dan first gave the presentation, and as much as I like Dan, and he knows how much I do, I didn't find it appropriate as he's running for office, and I know he's running unopposed, and I think he will be a great legislator, but I didn't find that appropriate. I think, I know Legislator Castellano has some really good ideas on this, but this is brand new. You know, at first when it was 2-year terms and 4-year terms, now 3, and I get that, and I think that's good. But now, I mean, for example, if this is passed at the next meeting, full meeting, can Dan serve at all?
Yes.
I would
That's
think
my-
so.
that was my
I've only,
legal
through
done
the chair.
12 years?
No, I haven't. I've only done
Okay.
9. I've only
Okay.
done 9.
That wasn't clear,
Yeah.
okay. And also, would this be the only change in the charter that would require a unanimous vote? And if so, could other things be changed to that, depending on the legislature? And is that is that a precedent you want to set? I think there's so many questions here, and I don't want to take up a lot of time, because I really do feel for the people who are here for the budget, which I do think should be your priority right now, and only the budget. So I'll close with that, but I think this process has not been very clean. I think you can do a lot better. So I would really urge you to put this aside for a while, work on your budget, and then move it to the full when you fine-tune everything. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the public would like to speak? Okay. Anyone else? No? So we made the motion to amend. And, excuse me? No, I said we made the motion to amend. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to number 4 is the approval of a local law strengthening the term limit provisions of the Office of Putnam County Executive. And these are the same provisions that we just spoke about for the legislature. So it would be, legislature, it would be the same. Okay, do we have any questions on that? On number 4?
Need to make the same 2 changes.
No.
No, I don't know if it's, no, it's not in there, it wouldn't be that. Okay, anyone else? Anyone, Legislator
It should be in
Castellano?
there. Again, a partial term, if somebody was to, it should be 2 full 4-year terms. And again, if, in the future, if the county executive decides to step down or move to another office or whatever, and the legislature has to appoint someone or someone runs in a special election to complete their term, and Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there would be a special election if somebody stepped down,
Yes.
and that would be a partial term that should not be imposed on the term limits of 2 4-year terms. This has to get to the legislature.
So we need to add that, I'm just
Through the
trying,
chair,
yes.
we did honor that with Mary Ellen Odell, because she filled the unexpired term, ran for a special election, and then did two full terms.
Right, but to make it clear here, again, I think we had the same issue
Right.
where if you served a partial term, I'm going to leave it there.
No, and I'll echo Legislator Nassarino's point that it's been the practice, and we have an example of that when Mary Ellen Odell was elected in the middle of a term in November of 2011. That term was not counted. And the way the charter reads right now, that was provided for. The way my suggestion is I think tightens that up to say neither two full terms, whether consecutive or not, whether partial or not. But that's not a hill worth dying on, I wouldn't think. Perhaps as a accommodation to Legislator Castellano's point, a very good point, is to perhaps just leave the first paragraph alone. Because as Legislator Nassarino points out, prior practice has shown that it's worked well. And I think, Joe, does that address your point that we have the history? So perhaps,
I certainly wouldn't want to see,
Yeah.
in the future, a potential county executive be short-term because he or she only served for 2 years.
I agree, and I
Of
think
course.
we should be
so
consistent.
perhaps
We should be consistent.
as a suggestion to my suggestion is maybe, and Joe and I did talk about this over the last few weeks. He's my legislator, so I've kind of been using him as a sounding board. I guess the way to do it is just to leave what is now the only paragraph in Section 3.01 alone, and merely just add a second paragraph to Section 3.01, which would be, again, if we go to the blue and reds, would simply be the unanimous vote required to change, amend, or repeal term limits for the county executive. And because I anticipated this, because Joe and I have been talking about it, I do have an additional, if this committee wants to consider it, that sets that out clearly. I don't know if you want me to hand it over. I know
The
you guys.
legislature?
You need do you need a unanimous vote for that?
No.
I think-
To accept the additional?
I think you do, don't you?
Well, we're the committee.
We're-
I know, I'm saying, I'm just trying to prove a point. You need a unanimous vote here. So, may I approach? No?
Yes. Make a motion to accept the additional. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This is, and again, merely, what this merely does is leaves the only paragraph in Section 3.01 alone, and it simply just adds the term limit paragraph as the blue portion.
Okay, number 4 or number 3?
I'm sorry.
This goes,
No,
No.
they have this.
oh, they have
For
them
the
there?
county
Oh, okay.
executive term limit,
Those are
yeah.
extras? They're extra here.
No, it's.
Oh, Paul,
belongs-
okay.
Chairwoman?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
So you just had a request from the public, and you have a request from your legislators, and you have a room full of people in the hall to put this on hold.
Okay, well,
And
we can't, we already,
you guys have different camps, and you work in those camps, and that's it. And
That's
you
it.
listen to those who are in other camps, you don't listen to the public, obviously. So could we make an exception here and table this until the next committee meeting?
no, we can't, because we already approved number 3, so we're moving on to number 4
So
for approval.
Let's wait on number 4.
No, we can't.
And listen to our public here and get to the work of the county business and the $205 million budget that we have in front of us.
One
Legislative,
comment from the public.
Legislator Castellano.
Comment not valid from the public.
Say it's not valid, but it doesn't
There's no back and
dictate-
forth. Let's stay in
It
order.
doesn't-
Does it matter?
It doesn't.
Let's stay in order.
No,
Let's
that's
stay in
not what
order.
I
That is
said.
what you said.
No, but that
You
doesn't,
just said the public doesn't matter.
Let's-
I did not say that, so let's roll the tape. Let's roll the tape.
Don't we?
I said one person commented, which isn't reflective of the overwhelming
That
audience.
person, they don't count?
You're telling us to yield to public comment. One person comment is my reply.
So you didn't listen to that public comment? Or
I didn't agree with
you
that
didn't
public
take into
comment.
consideration,
I
which
didn't
is-
agree
which
with
is
it.
par-
I heard it, I considered it, I didn't agree with it. Don't put
Okay,
words in my
okay,
mouth.
Let's move on. Now, Legislator Castellano, this is something that you discussed that you wanted to,
No, I'm just proposing the fact.
right, I
that,
understand.
Again,
Ex-
if you're serving not a full 4-year term,
Mhm.
whether it's 3 years, 2 years, or 1 year, it should not be accounted for in the 2-year term limit of the county
Yes.
executive.
Mhm.
So if in fact in the future, the county executive steps down and someone else brings a special election for maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3, that person should not have those years counted towards the full potential, assuming they win 2 elections, full 4-year terms. So they can serve 2 full 4-year terms and 1 partial term if the situation arises that no one should serve more than 2 full 4-year terms.
Right.
We should just
Yes.
mirror the language we
Exactly.
just
That's
adopted.
right.
That's all we need
That's
to
all,
do.
right. Mm-hmm. That's what I said. The same for the legislator is the same for the county executive. Okay, so. Legislator Crowley.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I just have one comment. Mr. Birmingham, you
Sure.
said that past practice served so well for County Executive Odell. Why are we changing this?
Well, I think that goes to the crux of the question here. Term limits were in place for County Executive Odell, and I think she was the first county executive where that applied. But the crux of the question here is not only for the county executive's position, but for the legislator's position. Make no mistake, this is a change, and this is something that is consequential, and it's something that a lot of constituents like myself believe in now, is that we should cement in and lock in term limits to make it almost impossible for term limits to be amended without a full vote of this legislature. Oftentimes, things like this get passed around Christmas time or maybe quiet times, but perhaps, well, there's plenty of folks here who are listening to our great debate here, so I think that's a good thing. But I think that this is important enough that this kind of change is what people are aching for, and this kind of change converted even a cynic like myself to term limits. So that's why I'm so strongly in favor of it. But I'm just one person out of
I just
100,000.
wanted to ask that question, and I
Would have to be
appreciate
amended.
your,
Have to accept
No,
this,
just
no?
put the language
Thank you.
from the other one.
Okay.
I think this
Where
is
is that?
very rushed, and I think it should go through legal. And thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome. Okay, so I make a motion to amend. We have to,
If there's a motion to amend, that's embodied in,
I want to add the same language that we,
yeah. Yeah, it's, this is you've just got the blue and reds right there, I think. This is the actual legislation that amends it. And again, you'll see the only difference between is just simply taking out the first paragraph of 3.01.
motion to accept the additional?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
What are we passing now?
It's simply the actual legislation that, your blue and reds are really just how the code is going to be changed, or the charter is going to change. In order to do that, though, you need some enacting legislation around that, and that's what this is. And you had the same language, or the same structure was used for the legislative one as well.
Can you point out exactly where that is in here?
Sure. Yes, if you take a look at Section 2 of what you were just handed,
Yes.
it says Article 3, Section 3.01 of the county charter, thank you, is hereby amended by adding a second paragraph to such section. Now, what you had earlier tonight simply made the changes to the county, had changed the first paragraph that's already there, and based on Legislator Castellano's point, that, and Legislator Nasarino's point, let's leave well enough alone, apparently 3.01, as it exists today with respect to consecutive or not, partial or not, seem to have worked for us in the county based on our history. So what this merely does is just take out tinkering with that section and merely just keeps in place what you had in your original was, again, a 9-vote vote required to amend, modify, or repeal term limits.
Okay.
Yeah, Section 2 is the only difference.
Okay, so May I make the motion
Go ahead.
to amend and insert
amended.
section 2 as documented here?
Second. All in favor? Aye. Now make a motion to approve local law strengthening the term limit provisions for the office of Putnam County Executive. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
We just
We
passed the motion.
we just voted on that.
She was trying, she had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. I'll let you come up.
You could always
I know it's
reconsider based on her, you could always reconsider based on her comments.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I've served on 3 different boards at the town level, and I think it's almost demeaning to say it's only one person here, Jenny. I do. I think even when you disagree, and of course you're completely entitled, most people do disagree with me, but I think the public's, any input we got from the public, be it one person or 100 people, I took very seriously, and I think it is demeaning, and
Well,
I
then,
appreciate it.
respectfully, I didn't mean to say anything that would insult you in any way. My point being is that what was said is there's a whole room of people here, but there was only one person that spoke to give their opinion, which is not reflective of the people in the room, nor is it reflective of the greater good. And I would speculate to say that. So I humbly apologize if I insulted you in any way. It wasn't meant to be something of that, in that regard, but rather than saying that there was just one person who voiced an opinion here tonight, to which I do not agree with. And I've been on various boards in the town, and I've been here for 12 years too. I understand it, I respect it, and I get it. And I know that when we work and we listen to various opinions. We consider various opinions. We do take everything under consideration, but at the end of the day, we vote for to the best of our ability and what we see. And your comment was well received, and I just had a different opinion about it.
I think you demean the public, though. I appreciate your apology, and I thank Nancy. But I think it's really, people don't come out today. They don't come out, and they don't, and we all know this. And that's why it'd be nice to have your meeting.
And that's why we have to take into consideration the silent majority as well.
Right. But I hope tonight you are going to put this off, and
Well, we're not, but we're not.
We already voted, so.
You didn't ask for more comments before you voted.
Yes, I did.
I don't think you did.
We had, everybody spoke. Everybody in legislature spoke 3 times. No, we're not talking about now
Motion's
anymore.
been made and
Motion's
seconded.
made. I'm moving on now to number 5.
Did we vote?
Yes.
Okay,
Read Robert's Rules of Civility.
okay.
Thank you, committee. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 5 is the approval for litigation settlement for CREVAC. Thank you for coming out this evening. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
For the public, welcome, Mr. Cherico and Mr. Silverman.
Yes. Good evening, all. First Deputy County Attorney John B. Cherico. On behalf of the Department of Law, to my right, as you know, is outside counsel Lou Silverman. And also joining me is my colleague, Risk Manager Matt C. Bruno Sr. So we are here to address this matter and any questions that may be presented this evening.
Do we have any questions? We discussed this last month. This was discussed in depth. We understand that. And if there are any questions, we might have to go into an executive session. So,
I
do you have
believe
any?
Mr. Silverman addressed, and both Mr. Cherico addressed all our questions in executive session. And I believe this is the right step moving forward, and I will support the resolution presented before us this evening.
Any other legislators? No? Okay, make a motion to approve the litigation settlement.
Any questions or comments?
Any questions or comments from the public?
Legislators?
Then no other legislators, nobody, no comments before we move on to approve this? Okay, I make a motion to approve litigation settlement for CREVAC versus Putnam County. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing there's no other business, I make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.